everyone, and welcome back to Neighbors to Know. I have a very special guest with us today, but I can't start without saying Happy Pi Day. It's March 14th. If you don't know what Pi Day is, you can Google it, but make sure you spell it right, because if you put the silent E on the end, it'll be a whole bunch of different pictures with pastries, and it'll just make no sense. So for you mathematicians out there, Happy Pi Day. So I wrote an article to the Bedford Citizen, a letter to the editor, a little while ago, about religion and politics. And my first sentence was, you never talk about religion and politics. If you're curious about the article, it's at thebedfordcitizen.org, and it's also up on their Facebook page. So never talk about religion and politics. The letter was about politics, so wouldn't it be complete if today's episode didn't talk about religion, which are not taboo topics, just topics that need to be talked about. So my neighbor today comes from Massachusetts, not in Bedford. He's kind of multi-state in what he does. And I would like to introduce you to the dynamic Sean Smith. Hi, Sean.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
Thanks so much for being here. I know there's a ton of people who are super excited to have us talking to each other today. No pressure.
I'm very excited about it. So I'm very grateful that you're doing this and that I'm being able to be a part of it.
I'm glad that you're here.
Yeah.
But
religion. It's funny that you say that, because I actually would avoid conversations about religion, right?
Well,
because I would
that's
never
not what we're doing
say
today.
that I'm religious, right? Because it comes with a lot of undertones.
Yeah.
You know, and when I look at what I do for a living as a pastor, it's truly about making a difference in the world, you know, and helping people just to thrive in life. And so sometimes we get put in a box, you know, the Christianity in general can be put in a box. And so I kind of try to bust out of the box a little bit and just understand that we're all human.
And that's the box that I put you in, because that's all that I knew about you until relatively recently. Those of you that watched our episode last time, I talked to David Scott, who I had met through Landmark. Sean's not playing guitar today, but you have some deep stuff to get into, so I have my tissues ready.
Yeah, I was inspired by David's episode. You know,
yeah,
like,
it was very strong.
David and I went through the Landmark journey together, and so he's coming, he's sang at our church and stuff like that.
Oh, that's right.
And so his story is moving, empowering, and so it was awesome to listen to you guys, the interview from last time. It's good.
So I usually go in like chronological order, but I feel like I should almost do that in reverse. So we're in the Landmark course right now together, the Self-Expression Leadership Program. And what was interesting, which just came up off the fly right now, so thank you to Ryan. So people think of Landmark. It's true. There's skepticism around Landmark and that it's cultish or whatever. Yeah. I think I'm very level-headed. Right. I told you yesterday I kind of put you on a pedestal because of how you speak and how you come across, that you just have everything really well put together. And we'll break that down a bit more today as to where that all came from. But the interesting thing is that, yes, you're a pastor, and my Landmark experience has been people that are very religious have a tough time with the premise of Landmark.
Sure.
Because they think, this is how things are done, this is how I should be thinking, and I'm completely paraphrasing. So to have you in this level of course, because you've gone through the forum, you've gone through the advanced course, now we're in the Self-Expression Leadership Program, it's a lot to go through and stick with it as a pastor. So have there been things, I love when I come up with questions that totally were not planned.
It makes it more fun.
Yeah, so coming at Landmark from a pastor's perspective, have you seen that pushback? I mean, you seem very open-minded anyway, but do you see any pushback with your beliefs as a Christian?
I do, and I think the bottom line for me is that it's about transformation. And quite honestly, I think that when I talk about the church, I'm just talking about the capital C church, so I don't care about different denominations, just the church in general, that we haven't done a great job with helping people lead transformed lives. And it's not necessarily an indictment on the church, it's just, to me, that's what I'm about. So the church that I lead is called Stone Coast Community Church, and I want to see people not just surviving life, you know, and just going through the motions. We talk a lot about like the dead man walking syndrome. This idea, like I wake up and I just do the same routine over and over and over again, you know, and I'm like, I want to help people bust free of that because I feel like there's so much more to life. And so, for example, you know, you and I being in this self-expression leadership course, when I saw, you know, 60 people sign up and the whole goal behind it was like to take on a project that made a difference in the world, right? I went back to my church and I was like, I mean, I was like excited, but at the same time, I was like, I wanted to pull them out of it and I wanted them to come and be a part of
Landmark,
the self-expression leadership program, because my underlying thing was if every person, right, that was in the church would take on a project for good.
Oh my.
Now, you have to think about it. The church reaches every area in the world.
Is your church a Christian-based church?
It's Christian-based. Okay. It's a non-denominational church, so it's not affiliated with a denomination, so it's literally called a non-denominational church, Christian.
But it's not Unitarian?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. But if you think about churches all over the world, like, you know what I mean, like in third world countries, there's a church everywhere. And so if we as Christians would take on that, right, and just say, I'm going to do a project that makes a difference in the world. And then the way that we're learning, right, and recruit other people, get more people involved, and raise up other leaders so that you can just keep moving, I see that that's so impactful that it would change the world. It really would. And so there's a slogan that I've from another leader in the church that says the local church is the hope of the world. And I believe that to the core of my being. So I'm not intimidated by Landmark or any other organization. It's like if organizations are about bringing good into the world, I wanna learn from them. And so I can see why a lot of Christians or pastors or whatever could get hung up on different things in Landmark. But like, as you know, it's like, get over it.
Yeah.
Right?
It is what it is.
You know, there's no perfect program, there's no perfect person, there's no perfect churches.
Right.
It's like we're all people trying to figure it out. And I don't care where people are at on their spiritual journey. I just don't. And I welcome that. I welcome the conversations. I want to hear their views on spirituality, you know, if they're atheists, if they're Jewish, if they're Muslim, it doesn't matter to me.
That's what's so interesting to me. Like, I lived in New York for 40 years before I came here. So I didn't even know what Unitarianism was. I grew up on Long Island, so I'm guesstimating here, at least from the people that I knew, it's like you're either Jewish or you're Catholic. Yeah. Me being Protestant was like, oh, what do you do? You know, it was kind of, Unitarian Universalist was certainly not a term at all that I heard until I moved to Massachusetts. Okay. We have a large UU church right across the street here, and I'm a member there now, but you know, you could be an atheist, you could be a Buddhist, you could be Jewish, like anyone could go there, and I felt that was so intriguing. And it could be historical based because it's Massachusetts and you know how they've been doing things forever. So I find that openness very interesting, but something that I thought of while you were saying that about Landmark too is, you know, it's not like one is a replacement for the other. Like you said, it's part of, this is your journey and how you're getting to wherever you want to be or didn't even know that you were going to end up being, like here. I wouldn't have envisioned this 5 years ago or even a year ago. Which is interesting because it's been a year since I started my work there because my forum was a year ago.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so it's interesting, but it's not an either or. It's like, you know, what works for someone doesn't work for somebody else, and you know maybe that's why people become or are agnostic or atheist, and you just have to accept people for who they are at their core.
I look at it this way too. It's like no different for, you know, as well as I do. There's other people that maybe have no religious affiliation. They have problems with Landmark. So it's not a Christian thing or not, it's just a human thing. But we all have our sets of beliefs and thoughts and convictions, and those get bumped up against. And so each person just has to figure it out. And I see the good outweighs the bad, in my opinion. And I bring a lot of the stuff that I'm learning there, I bring it to my church, I bring it to the people in my life. And I really enjoy the mindset of keep enlarging your vision, you know, of yourself and of the people around you. There's so many things that I appreciate about the coaching. Like there's a thing that my coach does, that, I don't know if you do it, but it's like the acknowledgement. Do you guys do that?
Of what you've done?
Just acknowledge you as a person. Like, so every time I'm on with the phone with my coach, he acknowledges me. And he asked me, how do I want to be acknowledged? It's kind of a very awkward type of thing.
Yeah, I'm curious, yeah.
And so the first time he did it to me, I'm like, I don't know how I want to be acknowledged. You know what I mean? Like, what do you even mean? But he was talking about, like, you know, we talk about you're the possibility of. And so say you want to be a possibility of, like, just being a really great leader or a visionary or a loving, kind person or whatever it is. So he'll say, well, that's how I see you. And he goes, I want to acknowledge that you're a tremendous leader. And he just goes on and on with this very beautiful, encouraging words that kind of like makes you like, all right, I am, you know, like, and so I've taken that onto my team, you know, and my leadership team, and I just like, I want to acknowledge you, and it's hard to do, and I found that fascinating. Like it's almost like sometimes I feel fake, and that I'm just like building the person up just to build the person, you know, so.
But it's your truth about what you see them as. I mean, I feel
and I
like
want to see them bigger.
Yeah, I
you know?
hear that a lot from, you know, discussions that we have and interviews that we have with other people and how they perceive you. And I'm noticing common trends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, if 20 people see me as that, why am I not seeing me as that?
Exactly.
You know, and
right.
you know, just for me talking to you today, you know, boldness. So I'm going to go into all landmark.
All right.
Who I am today is the possibility of boldness.
Right.
Because, you know, yeah, there's been things that I've gone through, but and I intentionally didn't ask you super specifics about you because I wanted to get, you know, to the core of that today.
Okay.
I lost my train of thought just there. But yeah,
boldness.
And listening to what those other people are saying about you, because that's how you're occurring out in society.
Okay,
and
right.
you have this little person in your head saying, no, 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 whatever, you have a flyaway, stop, you know, go like this because you have love handles today. I have love handles because I've been eating cookies and ice cream,
yes.
which I should not be doing.
So
I should be getting back to the gym.
It.
Yeah, but I'm happy, which is why I chose to eat a cookie yesterday.
Yep.
But, you know, all my love handles, whatever, they are. One thing that you said, I've been listening to a couple weeks of your sermons. You Facebook Live them, which is awesome. And then somewhere on YouTube that I backtracked a bit. One of the things you mentioned was that people sometimes get turned off by religion, but then you, you know, countered that with, this is like how the magic happens. You're talking about how the magic happens, which that could mean different. I mean, for some people, that could be like, oh, the divinity of God did this or whatever. But what did you mean? Or if you recall, what did you mean by that? That, you know, magic happens?
It was funny because there was a lady from Landmark that used that expression.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and because we were having this kind of dialogue about faith and stuff like that, and we were just, I felt like we were building a bridge together. And that's what I think I really try to do, right? Because I know once I say I'm a pastor, once I say I'm a Christian, people automatically put me in a box, right? Like this is what comes to mind. And so I really look at one of my roles in life is to help re-envision God in church. And I just really say, like, I don't know a lot of people that have a problem with, if you look at the truest essence of Christianity, it's like love your neighbor as yourself. You know, this idea of love is such a powerful thing that it truly can transform people's lives if we get better and better at loving people. The idea of showing dignity and respect to all human beings, right? Now, I'm not saying in Christianity that we get it right in that, but this is a foundation to our faith, right? And so this idea of demonstrating compassion to the less fortunate, to treat other people as you want to be treated. And I could go on, but there's so many beautiful tenets to our faith that get, you know, overlooked because of all the dogma and quite frankly, church history, right? And so I feel like it's part of my responsibility as a leader is to help people get over that, just like we have to get over stuff at Landmark, or you have to get stuff over your job and your family, like whatever it is, we always have to get over things. And so when I was talking to this young lady at Landmark, she was like, we were just talking about life, and she's like, you know, you can call it what you want. And so I was using like the Christian lingo, and then she's like, just call it magic happens. When the magic happens, right? And really that's the transformation. It's when people show up and they're alive and they are giving their lives to something bigger than themselves, and they want to make a difference in other people's lives. And so I'm like, who doesn't want to do that? Right? And so call it what you want. But that's what gets me excited.
So I'm going to take you out of your box now.
All right.
So I hope people that are watching continue, because I'm going to keep taking you out of that box as we, kind of loop through. So taking you out of somewhat taking you out of pastor's shop. I asked you a few things about you to know. You said, I own a vintage shop. And not only that, but you spelled it S-H-O-P-P-E. And I'm like, he really does own a vintage shop.
Well, I'll get to that in a second.
Well, yeah, so let's take you out of the box for that phase.
Right.
So the vintage shop is Four Echoes?
Yes.
So I'm curious about, for you to share about the vintage shop.
Yeah.
And I personally am curious about why it's called Four Echoes.
Sure.
But tell us first about the shop.
And so just so you know, I look at everything as part of the church. So that gave birth through the church. So the church owns that business.
Okay.
And so as the leader of the church, I want to continue to build businesses and acquire businesses. Because I have an underlying belief that all people, in order to give them dignity and respect, have to have work. And so our church is at the Highlander Charter School, and 70% of the kids that go there are from inner city Providence, Rhode Island. Okay. And when if I just talk to them and I try to build them up and I talk about hope, and unless I bring it to a very practical level, hope is not real to them. And so when I talk about hope for these young people, it's like I have to be able to get them a job. Because otherwise what they're doing is they're selling their bodies, they're selling drugs, they're turning to these other things, they're turning to gangs, and these unhealthy outlets that's actually taken away from their the fullness of themselves as human beings. And so in order to bring dignity and respect to them, I feel like the church has to do a better job of offering true hope, which in my opinion is helping them figure out how to get a great job. And so that's why hence we do mentoring and we do internships and things like that. Okay. So buying the store was just a natural next step to that, because the store, the things that we're about is helping with the homeless, helping with foster care kids, helping with kids with disabilities, and helping inner city youth. And so our church is a fairly small church where we probably average 150 people a weekend. But the amount of good that we can do. I
don't even consider that small.
Well, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really matter to me the size of it. It matters what we do. Mm-hmm. And so, and I only say that because I'm saying that the business provides another revenue stream.
For the church.
It's not taxing the church, right? It's its own nonprofit business, mm-hmm. and the monies that we get from there can go back into these people groups, so we can help homelessness, we can help the foster care. So we develop partnerships with local organizations throughout the community, and we just, so whatever that looks like, at the end of each year, we will just prayerfully consider how to utilize those monies that are left over. And so the more money we make, the more money we can give. And so that's the story of why we bought the shop. And it's called Vinny's Antiques. That's what it was called.
Vinny's Antiques.
Vinny's Antiques.
That's awesome.
And so when we acquired it, the story is pretty cool, that how it came to be, because I do think this idea of stepping out of your comfort zone and dreaming big, it all starts with that little step. Mm-hmm. And so I do have a way of saying, I'll say it wouldn't have happened without God, and I try to bridge that gap. What does that mean? So we were supposed to have started another business at a different property, and we were literally going that day to sign the papers, and it fell through. And I was like, okay, so you can get all depressed about that. You go, all right, we'll see what's next. Mm-hmm. And come to find out, I said to my colleague, her name is Kara, I said, Kara, why don't you go into Vinny's Antiques? I've heard it's been on the market and stuff like that.
I would just go just because it's called Vinny's Antiques.
You're like, what does he look like? And so she and my friend Alan, they went in one day, and when they went in, the model that we had for our business was a pure donation model. So we were going to receive donations, mm-hmm. Repurpose them, and sell them. And that's there's a a church in Mendon, Mass, that they have a business called the Blessing Barn, and that was the model that we were using. When Alan and Kara walked in the store, they said, "Oh, our model just changed," because at the vintage shop, you have vendors. So you have over 100 vendors that are there selling their goods, their own merchandise, and they pay us rent.
Vendors as people or as companies?
No, as people.
Okay.
So just local people that come in and they stock their booth with their types of stuff, and they sell whatever they want. And so we make rents off of that. And then as booths open up, now we take those on, and we do receive donations. So we kind of like blended the models. But back up a second on how that even happened was that they were able to get me a meeting with Vinny. And the first thing he says out of his mouth is like, "Just so you know, it's not for sale." And I'm like, well, we're here.
That's
so
a great way to...
I might as well share with you a little bit about who I am and what the church is about. And similarly, what I just shared with you about the vision, what we're after, want to make a difference in the world. And 5 minutes later, he goes, "I'll sell it to you."
Wow.
And I was just like, so that's what I said. I was like, oh my gosh, like, why? Like, what changed in the last 5 minutes? He's like, "I just believe in what you're doing." Wow. And we want to turn the store over to someone that has like what you're doing. And
is he still part of it or no?
No, we bought it outright, and he made that possible though, because at the time our church was less than 2 years old, which was just last year. It was last April. And I couldn't get a loan from the bank because of that. So I went back to him and I said, I can't get a loan. He's like, "I'll carry the note for you." Wow. So
what did you say to him?
he just did everything he possibly could to make this happen for us. Yeah. And so
I feel like when you open up that way and you're true and vulnerable, things just end up happening that you don't expect to happen.
Right. The magic happens. So I was saying that's the difference. Like I might use the language, "God showed up," and then the other young lady says, "Magic happens." So I don't care what you call it.
Right. Or you have a way with words.
But good has come.
Yeah.
So, and then the name Four Echoes, it comes from a book. This guy named N.T. Wright, who I really respect. Over the last 10 years, I've studied him a lot, read a lot of his books. And he's a former Anglican bishop, very, very smart individual, great writer. And so he came up with what he calls the 4 echoes of a voice. And what I appreciated about it was that his premise was that if God created, so obviously people have to wrestle with that if they believe that, but if God created all people in his image, then there's certain like DNA in all of us, regardless of what you believe. And I felt like it was a very loving, unifying thought, that it didn't matter what religious background you had, right? But that all of us as humans had these things inside of us. And so the 4 things were spirituality, relationships, beauty, and justice.
Why do they call them echoes?
So these
that makes me like things projecting out. Where
so they resonate within.
Okay.
It's the echoes that go through you as a human being. So like, for example, if you saw something happening on the street where someone, was stealing from somebody, you innately would be like, "That's wrong," or "unjust," right? Now, whether you do something about it is a whole nother thing, but like just inside of us, that echo is there. And now we have to wrestle with whether we act on that or not. This idea of relationships, right? That we all long to be loved, we all long to be accepted, to belong, and that's just humanity, right? So when we're in connection with other people, we're probably at our best. And so that's why the Trinity comes in. Like from a Christian perspective, you'd say that God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the 3 in 1, 1 in 3, that they're in community with. And so we've been designed for that. And so you see it in the opposite sometimes. So you see it when it's unjust, or you see it when it's a broken relationship, right? You've gone through a divorce, we've talked about that, so you understand the
I often see the glass
of
being half empty, and I'm still trying to not, I feel like it's, somewhat ingrained that it takes a lot of work to unlearn that. Here's all the negative things, that have happened, and woe is me.
Right.
And as I've come out of my comfort zone a lot over the past year, where I can see all the positive things, and people tell me them, so that they become more real for me. Yeah.
But you can see these everywhere, and what I love about it, it unites us. And so as people come through the store, I always say to people, like, I'm trying to create a church for the unchurched. Meaning, like, for anyone, right? That's what that means. Obviously for Christians, but for anyone.
Yeah.
And so we do things differently. And every person that coming through the store is a story.
Yeah.
Right? So now that we own the store, we have many volunteers from the church that go there. We have a few staff. They're getting to know people at that very human level. And just great things happen, you know, as you're building relationships with people, and they hear our story and they hear what we're about and they want to be a part of it. So we just keep expanding, right? Just keep enlarging that. And so that's part of it.
So you're reaching a lot of people by doing that.
You know, you're planting a lot of seeds.
Yeah.
And I'll trust God for the results of that, but we're trying to be in people's lives in a very positive way.
I like the planting the seed analogy, because you had asked me yesterday, I don't know what you're going to ask me today. I'll just go with it. I'll be bold and go with it. But you had mentioned to me yesterday about the show as being something that grew out of Landmark. My first day in the forum, the first time I got to speak, and I was scared. I'm like, I'm talking in front of 200 people, right. But yet I'm on the news here, and I'd like to think our viewership is about there. You know, I don't know. Yeah. I was really, really, really nervous, but yet came across as real through my tears and sharing and whatever. But so much opened up for me just by being open like that. So, you know, I guess by me doing that and showing my vulnerable side, that planted a seed that then I feel like I'm sharing through this show. And even though, I mean, you're my 9th show, but that doesn't just mean I've planted 9 seeds with people, because, I mean, David was sharing yesterday about the emails that he's gotten from people, right. And I just see him glowing.
Right. And
my very first guest, Anne, she's had almost 300 views, and she's like, "Who are these people that are watching?" But obviously, you're hitting someone, right. And that's the point of them seeing who you are and realizing that, you know, it'd be an interesting experience to have someone. I talk about Oprah a lot,
sure.
or Ellen DeGeneres on you know, at Landmark.
They figured it out.
But it doesn't matter, you know, if you're on TV or not.
Right.
Everyone has stories deep down from who they are, where they got to,
right.
You know.
It's the ripple effect, right?
Completely.
And we don't know where that's going to go, but it's not up to us to worry about the results as much as it is us showing up. You know, so when we were talking last night, I think that's what I was trying to pull out of you, right? This idea that just own this and inspire people, right where they're at, and you have a platform, mm-hmm. right? And so just step into that, and when you're enrolling other people, just, you know, tell them why you do what you do. And what you're sharing with me right now is it's about that ripple effect. It's about the humanity. It's about mm-hmm. We talked about self-expression, mm-hmm. right? That you want all people to have a voice and to be able to share their story and not shrink back, mm-hmm. right? And let's face it, all of us have gone through pain. All of us have gone through difficult times. And a lot of times what we do, there's a phrase that you can either become bitter or better, right? It's a choice. And so sometimes though we start building up walls, and we stop trusting people, and we stop loving people, right? I remember as I think I was a 12-year-old kid, like the first girl, right? Like you see, I was like, oh my gosh, like I wanna date her, right? And she played with me, like she like toyed with me. It was like, if I went after her, she'd no.
Is this your wife? Or
no, that was high school.
Okay.
But in middle school, so then I'd get a girlfriend, and then she'd like warm up to me. And then I break up with this girl, and then and then she'd like want nothing to do with me. And literally as a 12-year-old, you know what I said? I said, I'm never gonna love another person more than they love me.
Interesting.
Because I was chasing her, and every time I chased her, she hurt me.
Yeah.
And so think about that as a 12-year-old. Mm-hmm. That I internalized that I didn't want to be treated that way. I didn't want to be hurt that way. Mm-hmm. So thus, I'm only going to love people up to the point where they love me a little bit more. So I always have the upper hand.
Do you still feel that way now?
No, absolutely not.
Because you've been with your wife for a very long time.
Yes. No, now I could go on to why I changed that, but I obviously now as a pastor, a teacher or whatever, you know, I am always constantly encouraging and challenging people, just love fearlessly. You know, you're going to get hurt and it's okay, it's part of it. Mm-hmm. but you're a big person, you'll get through it. And for me, we serve a big God that can handle it. And so just keep loving people. It's a tenet of our faith, of my faith. And so that's why I said loving others is not a simple commandment. It's so many levels to that, because we do stop loving when we've been hurt. And there's a phrase that I love is hurt people hurt people. So whenever I find someone not being their truest self, I just give them grace, and I'll be like, it's okay, because I know there's something hurting them. Yeah. And if I can get to know them, their story, you talk about vulnerability, if I can share my heart with them and my brokenness and the places where I fall short, and we can build that bridge together, then together we can grow.
It softens them too.
Absolutely.
I've been hard for a while because of things that have happened to me. Right. And part of why I went to Landmark. Yeah. Like, why are these people smiling all the time? I just want to be one of them, and you know, not one of them, but I don't want to be unhappy anymore. Right. And I'm not saying that was the only thing. It's just, it's the process of growing. I want to pull you out of your next box. Okay. But I'm curious though, when you said that you always, you know, about not wanting to love someone that didn't love you more, what was it that changed that? I mean, I feel like that's in a short span, because you met your wife in high school. Yeah.
So I think I was probably very much a work in progress at that juncture. But as you know, I was paralyzed when I was a teenager.
Yes.
And so I was 13. I turned 14 while I was in the hospital. But I
really want to walk through that, because I couldn't even respond to your email when you wrote that. I mean, you listed things, and I'm stammering just because I'm still like, what? You know, I'll quick take you out of the 2 boxes. So you're out of the pastor box, you're out of the vintage shop box. Your picture, you know, it's funny because you're humble. Yeah. You say in front of other people, you know, I was a professional baseball player. I could see that, you know. This is Sean, you know, that you could do that. And then she said it was for the Yankees, and I'm like, oh, okay, New York Alliance, maybe not so much, because we'll get into that, but you mentioned about being paralyzed as a teenager. So I'm all being, you know, philosophical about it, thinking he must have gone through, you know, tough stuff, that he was paralyzed, that he couldn't move on, but that you meant physically. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what? How can someone who's physically paralyzed then go on to be a pitcher for the Yankees? Right. So can you walk me through that? What happened? So
at 13, you know, I like to tell, like, I was extremely healthy, very active, very, very good athlete, you know, being highly recruited for high schools, and you know, I was very good at baseball, very good at hockey. Those were my 2 best sports. And so I was on that trajectory even as a young kid. And so one day I literally had played a hockey game the day before, and I played golf at night, and then I started getting nauseous. And so I went to bed early. The next morning I went to stand up, and I fell back down. And I was like, what's going on? So I tried to stand back up again, and I fell back down. I wasn't strong enough to do it. Fortunately, I had a friend that had slept over that night, and I was like, Jack, you got to help me up, you know? So he had literally—
You were 13?
I was 13, okay. And he carried me into where my father's little apartment thing was, but he was gone for the day. And so just to fast forward, it was like by 5 o'clock that night, I was completely paralyzed and on a respirator. So it just hit me, and it's called Guillain-Barré syndrome. And so some people get it and they can walk around, they're just tired, you know, and some people, you know, you get paralyzed in your feet. And I just had a very severe case, and I could literally only move my left eye. And so I was on a respirator.
Was there something that is, I don't know enough about it. I feel like there's, when you mentioned the name, I feel like it's tied together, like with a vaccination or something, that they say if you've had this. Am I wrong? Or?
Yeah, I guess that there's more studies on that now. I didn't know that back then. It was just it was a virus. That's what they told me.
So it's not like it was, you know, something genetic, or like something had happened when
I
you
was
were
told
playing
that
hockey?
Anyone could get it. You know, like 1 out of every 100,000 people get it. I was just talking to someone last night, though, that was saying it is vaccine related, or possibly. I don't know. I can't take the flu shots right now, like as being someone who had it. Yeah. But it was just something that obviously changed my life, you know. I spent 4.5 months in the hospital, 2.5 which I was completely paralyzed. And so if you think about my athletic background and obviously as a young kid, how healthy and strong you are, and you have your whole life ahead of you. I did a lot of reflection. You know, the days were very long when you can't move. And so
neurologically you were there.
I was aware.
Okay.
You know, I couldn't talk because I couldn't, I was paralyzed all the way up to my left eye. And so after, I don't know if it was a couple weeks, I was on a respirator, so they had the tube in my mouth, so I couldn't talk, obviously. And then they put it in my neck, so I have a trach. I had a trach that was a talking trach. Mm-hmm. So like, say my mom was visiting, she could physically like hold that, and then I could speak, you know. But I'll tell you what, those 2 weeks without being able to communicate were the longest 2 weeks of my life, and just scary, right? A lot of life-threatening things happened, other complications as a result of the virus. Mm-hmm. And so I think going through that, I took away a lesson of don't take anything for granted. Like, don't take people for granted. Don't take life. Don't take this day for granted. And I was just sitting with a couple yesterday morning, and I was having that conversation with them because we were talking about suffering, and it's a big Christian thing that no one likes to talk about because no one likes to suffer. But there's something about in suffering that if you embrace it, I know that sounds funny, but if you embrace it, you actually experience something that no one else can experience. And so by me going through that time in my life and nearly dying, I now cherish each day probably much more so than most people. And that's how it's a gift, right? And so I think I live life a little bit differently than others because of that experience. It's like people that can survive cancer. Like you just talk to them and you hear their story. They approach life differently. And so in a sense, if we can embrace suffering, you actually can love more deeply. You can come out the other side fuller, more whole, maybe more like God intended us to be. And so that idea of not loving another person, it was thrown out the window. It was like, no, I don't have time to worry about that.
Yeah.
Now it's about loving people as much as I can.
Well, while you were going through, I mean, I don't know if I assume you do remember it, but you're 13. I mean, that's such a coming of age time.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting 4 months, like, not knowing did you understand did they know, like, okay, here's the prognosis. You'll be okay in 6 months or whatever.
They didn't know. I mean, some doctors were saying I wouldn't walk for 2.5 years. You know, some didn't know if I'd ever again. You know, you just didn't know. My parents kind of protected me from that. They didn't want me to. They were told that by the doctors, so I found that out hindsight. Okay. I just like literally every day, I found myself trying to move. I was trying to move my arms every day, trying to move my toes, my legs, like. And so probably the happiest day of my life was when I was trying and it actually worked.
I was going to say, so what was the progression then out of it?
It does reverse itself. So I got paralyzed from the feet up.
Okay. And
then it reverses itself. So at first I could like move my head a little bit.
Just over time, or
over time,
because it's viral. I mean, is there a method?
It's just Guillain-Barré. That's how it happens. I don't know why. I don't understand how it reverses itself.
Right.
And so after I was able to move my head a little bit, so again I kept trying to move my arms, and finally one day as I was moving it, it flopped a little bit, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I started crying. I was like, this is like the most amazing thing ever. So I just kept trying and trying and trying, and so like I said, 2.5 months I was completely paralyzed. But then the next 2 months it was that slowly, all right, now I can move my arm a little bit, and then I can move my other arm a little bit, and then, you know, then the process of like, you know, will it come back in my legs, and then, you know, 4.5 months I got out of the hospital, and then did 6 months of rehab, outpatient, and then I was like, it never happened. So I missed a year of high school, meaning I went for like 3 months because I missed the first 4 months, and so I had to repeat my freshman year. But coming back in my now true freshman year, I was fully healthy. I was 6 feet tall, 165 pounds, played 3 varsity sports, and ready to go.
So you can go back to sports like you played before?
I did,
mean,
yeah.
Like physically, you could absolutely do that?
Everything was fine.
But, you know, were you nervous about going back into sports? Like, what if this happened, or overdoing it, that something would instigate something?
Because it wasn't like a knee injury, right? That you're concerned about, oh, you tore your ACL or something, right? This was just literally like, I couldn't move, and now I can, right? I was I went down to 97 pounds. I was 5'11", 97 pounds. I got out at 116 pounds, and I had grown an inch and a half while paralyzed.
You're 13.
Right, and so I was always big into lifting. Anyways, I started lifting when I was 11, and so I just got back into my routine, and that's the other thing. Like I probably outworked everybody else, right? Because I cherished it and I loved it. You know, it wasn't something like I had to do. It was like I couldn't wait to get out there and compete, and it was kind of a saving grace to get back. It was something I thought I had lost.
And did doctors express any concerns that, you know, if you overdid or, I mean, it's tough with viruses because I had Epstein-Barr when I worked at Macy's. I was 19, I think, and it just makes you tired all the time, but to the point that you can't, you know, you can physically get out of bed, you're just really, really tired.
Right.
And after a summer, then like I was fine. But you still cured the virus in you, but nothing's ever happened since then. Is it the same way where you have the virus in you and it's just?
I think it's
just
gone.
kind of
I think I'm healed and it's over with.
So nothing that
there's no side effects.
Okay. It's amazing how that even works. It's such a humongous thing, and then it's done.
Right, and I think that was my first like real experience with God, like the whole idea, do I believe in God and stuff like that. And I know that there was thousands of people praying for me, thousands of letters that were coming in with prayers and well wishes and stuff like that. And so it made me question, of course, right? And then when I got out, so I think I was on a spiritual journey from that point on. And it wasn't until I was 21 that I actually became a Christian, but I think it started at that time.
Was it after the Yankees approached you and said, "Hey, come on over"? And
I know,
how did
traitor.
That happen?
I have to be careful. There's a lot of Boston fans.
Yeah, well,
I didn't have a choice. They drafted me, so I didn't have a choice.
But you didn't actually live in New York.
No, most people don't know. Like a lot of the big league teams, they have like 7 minor league teams, and so they have like 4 single A teams, a double A team, and a triple A team. That's just normal. And so I was down in Florida for a lot of my career, Tampa, Florida, and then I played 1 year in Greensboro, North Carolina. So, and because I got hurt, I never made it to the big leagues, and so thus I didn't live in New York.
What happened with when you?
I had shoulder surgery, so I was a pitcher.
Okay.
And after I had surgery, the velocity didn't come back. I was throwing in the low 80s. I went in throwing in the low 90s, and then I went down to throwing in the low 80s.
So socially, when I moved here from New York, literally the first day I was here, my kids did like a visit to their classrooms. The first question that was asked, "Oh, you're from New York. You're not a Yankees fan, are you?"
Right.
And which is so funny because in New York, it's like the rivalry is you're a Yankees or a Mets fan. You're an Islanders or you're a Rangers fan. You're a Giants or you're a Jets fan. But it's all still New York, although I think one of them's in Jersey now, but still, and then you come here and it's like, you Yankees fan, here's your red X right on your shirt. Did you feel that at all by like traitor,
I mean, more like goofing, you know what I mean? Like my friends would goof on me and stuff. And now I don't, people don't get this about me, but I don't watch baseball at all. I'm not a fan.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Why?
I don't know why. It's a slow game, right?
I've never been to.
Some people are baseball enthusiasts, just naturally, and I wasn't. I loved pitching.
Okay.
So I didn't love the sport of baseball. It was very slow, Like I was a hockey player, and it was fast-paced and physical, and I loved that. And I had a full ride to go to Boston College to play hockey and baseball, so that was a big decision. Do you go pro and play baseball, or do I go to Boston College? And I was 18 years old at the time, so I just made a decision and went with it.
I like that we've opened this box. It's all in different sections. Yeah.
A lot of people don't know these things.
Yeah, because when I was giving little pieces about talking to you, and I said, you'll find out anyway, so it's not like no one's going to know, because they're going to know when this is up on YouTube.
Right.
But, I said, he was paralyzed, and they're like, what? Like, I'm just going to leave you there, because we'll find out today. Yeah. It's just, it's awe-inspiring to come from that and not, not want to be scared. And I've mentioned at Landmark, and I've mentioned here too, about being diagnosed with fibromuscular dysplasia. And it's the same thing where it's like, you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, I'm here. Why are we griping about X, Y, and Z? Right. And I don't think about it every day. Well, today I thought about it because I'm like, I can't lift the chairs up to bring them in here. I could, but why would I want to even potentially risk anything so people can carry heavy things for me? That's not so much of a problem. It's just hard to sometimes ask and, get over myself, but to know that that's something that I need to do.
Yeah.
So before talking about your project, is there anything else about you that you didn't tell me about that's kind of,
I don't know. Obviously, there's tons of things you could go into, right?
Yeah.
But I just gave you some stuff that I thought would maybe help people, know me a little bit better, and hopefully my story can inspire people because, you actually, it was interesting when you wrote back because you said you thought I might have been like paralyzed in a different way than physically.
Right.
And yet that's how I think a lot of people live their life, as if they're paralyzed, right? With fear of failure, whatever it might be. And it's like, that's what I really want to give my life to that end, to really help people just overcome that and lean into all that they are, and so going back to Landmark, that idea of bringing it out of people, I think that's what they do. They just look at people and pull it out of them. And from a Christian perspective, that's what I believe what we're supposed to be doing as well. And so there's nothing better for me than when I see a person truly transform, and because then what's possible in that person's life to impact all these other people's lives. And so
I never bring my phone out, but as you were saying that, so yesterday you did that. So I'm going to read a text I got this morning because I said I was nervous about interviewing you because I put you on this pedestal because of all these things you've been through. So I'm not going to call out who it was because I didn't ask him this to start off with. But he wrote, I admire Sean. He's so full of wisdom, faith, love for human mankind. Apparently you gave him a great breakthrough last night at Landmark. I don't know what you did, and we don't need to share that here for his privacy. You reminded him that people are unique, like you were saying, at the core everyone's the same. You approached, or he approached someone this morning on a human level, and the person actually was inspired by who he was as a person based on what you told him as a person, and made fantastic things happen.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Well, no, that's why I'm reading it, because I don't want to wait. He goes on, and he did say he was going to share what those were, and he said, be bold, strong, and approachable today. So
that's awesome.
I think that we're doing that. But so I feel like you've done a ton of projects through the church, and one of the things that we're working on right now are projects through Landmark, which I'm sure you're very used to from what you've been doing for so long. But so your project that you're working on right now is to help kids that are moving out of the foster care system.
Yes.
So I'm curious. I don't know a ton about the foster care system, so I'd like to know more about that. Well, let's start there.
Yeah, what's interesting too, Jen? Like sometimes people don't jump in the game because of a lack of whatever, right? Like I'm not an expert at that, so thus I'm not going to do anything about it. I know nothing about the foster care system. I didn't foster kids growing up. I mean, as a parent, I've never fostered before. I wasn't a foster child myself. I've known a couple of people that have, but just like probably everyone else has. But there was a lady from my church who is very much involved. And I'll never forget this. I was sitting at my son's baseball game. I had my earbuds in, and she's on the phone with me. And I felt like she had me like by the shirt, like she was yelling at me through the phone. You've got to do something about this. It's like
that's what happens when people put you on a pedestal.
Right?
You are changing the world.
So I'm like, okay, I will, right? And but she was so passionate, and it breaks my heart. Like she just started talking about real people. And she's like, you don't understand the pain, Sean. You don't understand what these kids go through.
How did she know?
So her daughter has fostered over 40 kids.
Wow.
And they've now since adopted 6. And so she's like the grandmother who's always there for them, supporting them through it. So she's lived that world for many, many years. And she's just like, she was so adamant and passionate. And I knew nothing about it. But I just said, we got to do something. Right? And so we just started, and there's a couple organizations in our local area, and I had them come and speak at the church. I figured, well, awareness is the first step, right? And helping people understand the need, because if you don't know if there's a need, you won't do anything about it. And I don't know all the statistics, don't hold me to it, but it was like, say there's 2,000 kids that needs homes, they probably have 1,000 homes available, so there's 1,000 kids without homes, so they're looking for more foster parents. So just sharing that with the church, hoping that different families would say yes if they wanted to do that, And my wife and I had to have a real conversation about it. We haven't landed with that, but it's like, that's what I hope happens, right? You just throw it out there, like you talk about planting seeds, and get people to realize this is a real issue in our community. And then
the issue being that they don't have places to go?
For foster care kids,
okay.
Right? There's a shortage of homes, so they live in shelters and whatnot, in group homes, etc. And so now, as I started looking into it more, I found that through talking with this lady too, like the kids that age out of foster care, my understanding is that, let's say they're 18 years old, they're literally like given a check for $200 and a pat on the back, expected to go face the world. And now, and subsequently, I've talked to a lot of people, and everyone will say the same thing. It's like it leads to homelessness.
What do you do with $200 in Boston?
Nothing.
I mean, it's in Rhode Island or whichever.
Wherever.
It's like $200.
Right? Yeah, you become homeless, you prostitute your body, you drugs and alcohol, you get incarcerated, you have a child who you can't take care of, who ends up in the foster care system, and this endless cycle, right? And so, I mean, it doesn't take long for you envision that, and you go, that's wrong, right? That four echoes of a voice, that's unjust. Mm-hmm. And so, again, as a church, we got to do something about it. And so I've been looking at a property that's in my hometown that has 16 acres of land, 4 buildings. My long-term goal is to have at least 10 young people that are aged out of the system to live there and to live in community with. So I have a couple of people from my church that are committed to living there, mm-hmm. just as a source of love and support, right? Mm-hmm. And just that stability, the consistency, and then these kids can know that this is home, it's theirs, they're gonna have their own room. But not just that, but we want to teach them life skills. We want to do, just like I have a 21-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 16-year-old, just like I want for my kids.
The mentorship and someone for them to look at as...
How are they going to launch out well? And I said to myself, I have an 18-year-old, and I said, what if my wife and I, before we got him into college, said, we're done. Don't call us. Don't expect money from us. We're not going to help you get into college. Go. You're on your own. And I'm like, we got to do something, right? So if they had a place that they could be, and they didn't have to worry about the stress of finding a place to stay. It also comes, and I've learned this subsequently, like they comes with benefits, like they get health care benefits, they get state aid to go to college, they get a stipend to pay rent. And so there's a lot of built-in things that they can now take advantage of that lead to a better future, mm-hmm. right? And so we can just come alongside them, love on them, accept them right where they're at, and then learn life skills, get an education, or go to a trade school. We're going to start a business on the property for events. So weddings probably be the primary event, but other events as well. And so that will be another revenue stream for us to help support the property, but it allows these kids, if they want to help run the events, say we do weddings, they can do catering, they can do mm-hmm. the culinary side, they can do the management side, they can do the facials and the hair and the florists, like just on and on it goes. And we'll team up with local businesses in the area, and hopefully those internships turn into real jobs and careers. But the goal is, when they're ready, launch out well. So whether they're 22, 24, 26, whatever that is, help them so that they can be great citizens and that they can make a difference in this world. And so that's the long-term vision. So I'm starting now by starting a mentor program. So I've talked to 10 people that I know. I've shared this story with them and said, would you be a mentor? And they said yes. I have another 10 people that will help with like what I call wraparound services, just to kind of help out with the different things, mm-hmm. And just get to know the kids. What are their hopes? What are their dreams? What are their obstacles? What are the things that get in the way? And so how can we come alongside them, help meet their needs, and then help them to flourish? And so I look at this as like a twofold project.
So one of my final questions for you, was there a mentor for you that did this for you? Like you want to do this for other people?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of like all of us should be mentoring someone, and we should all have a mentor. So yeah. I do have mentors in my life. going way back to coaches in my life, to some teachers in my life, to my pastor, another pastor. And so I've kind of always surrounded myself with good people too. You know, I think that's important. And so I don't want to like highlight any one person, but I definitely see the value. I still have people I can call today and go, hey, I need help with, or I'm wondering about this, I have questions about this, I don't know what to do about, right? I also appreciate that about Landmark, right, where you have a coach that I can call anytime. And so I think everyone should have a mentor, and everyone should have a mentee. You know, I do. I think that's, it's a beautiful model, and call it whatever you want, but like just be investing in someone, and then make sure you're being invested in as well.
And to be open to ask,
Yes.
because you know people have that
It's an
fear of
honor.
asking.
It's an honor.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Thank you so much, Sean. I'm so
You're very
glad that
welcome.
you were here today. But
Thank you for having me.
I do, because you have this forum here to, you know, to talk to everyone. You have hundreds of viewers watching you right now. What would you want to support for you in making this this project with the foster care system happen?
Yeah.
You know, how can people reach out to get a hold of you to find, you know, say, hey, I can do this, or hey, I can do this, or...
Sure. So one of the big things with the bigger vision of securing a property, the property is $1.6 million and probably needs another $1 million worth of renovations. And so I am looking to raise $2.5 million. So I kind of, when I tell people about the vision, it's like, if you want to be a mentor, get in touch with me. If you want to help with donations financially, that would be great. Any of the wraparound services. But basically, I reach out to anyone that has a heart's desire to care for that particular community. I think that this is just one step. So obviously, the more people that I network with, the more people that get involved, the more we can do. I'm not just stopping at one property. It's just, this is how you get in the game. And so if you want to be a part of that, please get in touch with me. And I would love to have a conversation with you. If you'd like to go through the property, I give vision tours probably almost every single week. And again, it's my way of sharing hope, sharing vision. And I am hoping to, you never know who you meet. You don't know how it's going to impact a person. And so like, if this inspires you to start a mentor program in where you live, you know, we can always talk about how can I support you in that. So I feel it'll come full circle. But of course, I'm available, and I love having conversations. So if anyone would like to meet and talk about it, I'd love to do that.
How can they get a hold of you? Or should
you
I
want
just
me to
put
give
that
my cell phone
separately?
number? I mean,
No,
you do
that's
whatever you
probably
want.
really
You can give
personal,
my,
but
you can
is
give
there a
my
name
email.
yet for your project, or no?
Yeah, so Fostering Hope, you know, and so, but yeah, please feel free to share my cell phone number, my email. I'm an open book, so I don't really care. You know?
No, I'll put have your email address on
that'd be
there for
great.
people to get a hold of you, and you can watch you every week.
There you go.
Yeah, Stone Coast Community Church.
Yeah.
I've liked them on Facebook, so you can listen to Sean talking every Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course you can always do that.
Yeah.
I'm always encouraged, you know, whenever, especially coming to Landmark, and I hear different people, hey, I saw you on Sunday, and I was watching the, you know, and I hope, because one of my goals is I do try to inspire every Sunday. You know, obviously I'm using a biblical teaching to do that, but it's life application, meaning it's applicable to our everyday lives. And so yes, of course, I'm trying to be the church and build the church, and I believe that can be done remotely.
Yeah.
Right? So the
I'm
more
just
people that
watching
follow
from my
us and
bed,
watch
like,
us online, great.
Yeah, I'm
you know?
sleeping in, or not sleeping in, but I'm laying in bed in my pajamas, and I'm like, yep.
Yeah. The one thing I haven't figured out yet, and it'll probably be another project in the future, is like, how do I help those that are attending church via Facebook Live, but then make it real in their lives? Because obviously the people that show up physically, we do these kinds of projects, and they get to participate hands-on. So I do want to figure that out. Like the folks that are, you know, they could be anywhere in the world, right, and watching what we're about, and hopefully they're inspired by that. But then I'd love to figure out ways to hear back their stories and how they're taking what's being taught, and then how is it being lived out, right? And how is it impacting other people, and who's starting a business, who's starting a mentor program. And so I'll definitely take that on in the future to leverage that, because I think the church needs to be organic. It needs to be, you know, alive and well and far-reaching. So it's not about just coming to our churches in Warren, Rhode Island. It's not just coming to that physical location. It really isn't. We talk about all the time. It's not about the building. We meet in a school. It's not even a church building. but it's about being the church. Go out and be the good news. That's our vision statement. Just go out and be the good news. And that just means the things we talked about. Go out, love people, and make a difference.
And I know because you do address the audience, I should say the audience, the people that are watching you on Facebook or whatever, you address them, because I remember watching on Sunday about, you were asking to write down 3 words about something. I can't recall what it was. And I wrote my response in there. So that's, one way of communicating back and forth. But I know, so I was painting for Kindness Rocks.
Oh yeah, I love this project.
It's great that you know about it.
Yeah.
Because you found one.
We do it at a church. And,
oh, you do?
Oh yeah, no, that's something my mom makes these all the time. She sells them in the store at Four Echoes. We team up with an organization called the Health Equity Zone of Bristol, Rhode Island, that does these all into all the different schools. So we took it on as a church, and so yeah, I'm very familiar with it.
I just found out about it a few months ago. Part of with the show that I had the people that ran it in Bedford come on, so we painted and whatever. But I started, painting them based on the person that was coming in and what I thought of them. And there were a few things that you said on Sunday's sermon that hit me. So I made it blue with what were supposed to be clouds, but I'm not an artist. I'm a mathematician, which is why I celebrated Pi Day today. So 3 things. You had a difficult experience happen that you talked about in your last sermon, and you can take a look at Stone Coast Community Church on Facebook and or on YouTube to learn about that. But you'd mentioned 3 things: to love deeply, to live fully, and to grow faithfully. And I didn't want to give you a small rock, not because that's a lot to write down, but I wanted you to kind of have it out someplace. You could do whatever you want with it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But it was one of the bigger ones I picked up. When I got these from Sandy Neck Beach, it sounds great in theory until you have a bag that weighs like 60 pounds. And I'm like, whoa.
Oh my
but
gosh.
part of it with you, I'm like, it's a heavy rock, but I feel like you are a heavy rock.
Thank you,
And, for lots of different people. And, that's
this
how
is
I
powerful.
see you.
I mean, I really.
It's a heavy rock, isn't it?
Well, and don't we all carry a backpack filled with rocks that weigh us down too, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of juxtaposing we can do with that. But the reason why we call our church Stone Coast Community Church, Stone Coast represents the beauty and the pain all together. If you think about a coastline, right? You got the sunset, the sunrise, it's beautiful, right? But you also have the rocks that are there that are getting pounded and jagged, and it represents the hardness of life. But there's also so much beauty there. And in the scriptures it talks about that God will build his church on this rock. On this rock I'll build my church. And so this does mean a lot. And then the phrases that you captured, there's going to be days where I got a heavy backpack and I'm feeling weighed down. And this can serve as a great reminder to what I'm about, what our church is about, and what I would love to pass on to others. So it's a beautiful gift. Thank you.
You're welcome. So thanks so much for driving on up here and sharing your story with everyone. Sean's you're a very deep person, and I'm glad that you've watched for today. And I encourage you to open up your box too. It might be scary at times to be vulnerable, but you never know what you're going to learn from somebody else, and what you're going to learn about yourself when you do take that box and you just very slowly open different pieces to it and realize who you are. I started the interview today nervous, and I didn't know what to expect. I don't feel that way at all right now. I feel very empowered and bold and ready to continue the day. So I hope you feel the same, and I want to thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.